The following program is brought to you by the Fetzer Institute, www.fetzer.org, and by these organizations. Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president, is recognized as the greatest contributor to civil rights of all time. In the face of unrest and a potential war between states that had only been united for 85 years, he followed through with the agonizing task to free those whom had been enslaved. He faced the responsibility of his decision by promising to defend federal law and the Union. No president before him had faced consequences as grave as those that were about to unfold. Even he couldn't have realized the lasting impact that his brave actions would continue to have on Americans almost 2 centuries later. Tonight on Detroit Public Television, from the Henry Ford, in high definition, a gathering of educators, a former U.S. ambassador, an historian, and citizens of Metro Detroit will observe Lincoln's legacy, race, freedom, and equality of opportunity. Your moderator of this town hall meeting is Professor Adam Green from the University of Chicago.
Coming off of this bus, where Rosa Parks started the Montgomery bus boycott over 50 years ago, I'm reminded of all of the ways in which her life was an example of something Abraham Lincoln thought was a great truth of this country. The truth that it was ordinary citizens, regardless of rank and status, who were able to make this country the more perfect union that Lincoln and so many others hoped that it would be. The themes in this museum are reminders of the life of Rosa Parks and the life of Abraham Lincoln. Independence, freedom and union, votes for women, civil rights. The artifacts in these various exhibits also are reminders of their life, whether the great inspirational elements such as Thomas Paine's common sense and the 13th Amendment that helped free the slaves, or whether they're reminders of the great cost in trying to realize freedom in this country, such as the separate seats on this bus assigned to whites and blacks, or the chair in which Abraham Lincoln was tragically assassinated in 1865. Lincoln believed that this country's genius lay in its capacity to realize a new birth of freedom. What will be the new births of freedom in the future for this country? Join us at the Town Hall on Lincoln, Race, and Equality of Opportunity at the Ford Museum, and join us for the discussion about what we could understand to be those future births of freedom in the United States. Let me introduce our panel for the evening this evening, and I'll start over from the left. John Stauffer is Professor of English, American Civilization and History at Harvard University. He's the author of numerous books and articles, 2 of which I want to single out in particular: The Black Hearts of Men, Radical Abolitionists, and the Transformation of Race, which won several prizes in various fields of scholarship in this country, and is an important book in terms of thinking about the generation of abolitionists who were active during the middle years of the 19th century. The second is a book called Giants, The Parallel Lives of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, that deals with the interaction, the sometimes contentious relationship, and ultimately the friendship that existed between those 2 great Americans, individuals that many people see as among the greatest citizens that this country has ever produced. Professor Stauffer. Next to him is Douglas Brinkley. Douglas Brinkley is a distinguished professor of American history at Tulane University, and many of you know him as among the most prolific and visible of the historians working out in the public as well as in the academy. He's involved in a variety of different projects and has spoken to a number of different topics. 2 books that I would want to cite in particular of his work, one being the book, The Unfinished Presidency, Jimmy Carter's Journey Beyond the White House, which many people see as instrumental in terms of bringing President Carter into greater visibility in relation to his eventual winning of the Nobel Peace Prize very recently. And the second is the authorized biography of Rosa Parks, the same Rosa Parks who sat on the bus that's exhibited here at the Ford Museum and began the Montgomery bus boycott that many people see as one of the important landmarks in relation to the civil rights movement, Professor Brinkley. Next to him is Darlene Clark Hine. Darlene Clark Hine is the Trustees Professor of History at Northwestern University, and prior to that, a member of the faculty, a professor of history here at Michigan State University, proud contributor to the conversations about history in the state for many years. Professor Hine, too, has written many books. Two that I want to single out in particular, a recent textbook that's about to go into its fourth printing, The African American Odyssey. And then second, an encyclopedia on African American women's history that many people see as a kind of opening and inaugural text in relation field of African American women's history, an important addition to the ways that we not only think about African American history, but the ways we think about the story of the United States generally. And then finally, to the right, Andrew Young. Andrew Young is familiar to all of you in many, many different ways. A lieutenant to Martin Luther King throughout the years of movement building and movement organizing through the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the UN ambassador under the presidency of Jimmy Carter, mayor of Atlanta, and an important private citizen over the course of the last several decades. We are honored to have him, as we are honored to have all of our panelists. Please join me in welcoming them. As I said in the opening remarks, what we want to do is begin not with our panelists, but with one of the person-on-the-street interviews that were recorded prior to this meeting. I'm going to ask that we cue up the first statement that's made by Lee Cagle, a gentleman who was interviewed, I believe, here at the Ford Museum a few days ago.
Legacy is a big word. I think just behind me is a courthouse that attests to at least Henry Ford's admiration of Abraham Lincoln, that we would have it in such a place as Greenfield Village. It is enduring here. His story is enduring, I should say. Abraham Lincoln, I think, stands out as the man who held the promise of America in very high esteem. And even though it was great sacrifice during that Civil War, that was the goal, to maintain the Union, maintain that promise of this great thing we call the United States of America.
I want to put the same question to all of the panelists that was put to Lee Cagle in talking to the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. Each of you are important thinkers and important citizens in this country. What does Lincoln's legacy mean to you in relation to your thoughts, in relation to your experience, in relation to your hopes for this country? And I would ask any of you to start, and this will be a way to begin to speak a little bit about your thoughts about Lincoln and how they've had importance in terms of the ways in which you've thought about your relationship to this country and its history.
Well, age before beauty, and so I'll go first. I see Abraham Lincoln as really helping to translate the meaning of the Constitution to the entire nation. And I can't think of Martin Luther King making it a reality without also thinking of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. So that there's a continuum here of the fulfillment of the promise of the Constitution that, and I think of him not as an emancipator so much as a great leader. Holding this nation together was no simple feat.